Hey y'all, this is William from Perma Pastures Farm, and today we're going to be rehandling the shovel, also making a few other improvements to it, but mostly, rehandling it. That's the most important part. While I was out digging comfrey, this shovel started to crack. It's not completely broken, but it's gonna break next time I harvest comfrey for sure. So we're gonna go ahead and put a new handle on it and make some other improvements to the shovel as well. All right, so our goal is to replace the handle on this shovel right here. Now we have a couple of other shovels that we need to replace as well. One I've already done, the other one I haven't done yet, and this one I haven't done yet either. A couple of benefits to rehandling it yourself is that you can put a better quality piece of wood on the handle itself. I mean, you don't know what kind of handle or what kind of wood you're getting with a lot of these shovels. Also, if you look at this one, kind of hard for you guys to tell, I'm sure, but the orientation of the grain is skewed off to the side on this handle, which, probably aided in it breaking early as well. But you save money. You don't have to buy a new shovel. You save money by rehandling it, and if you make the handle yourself, you didn't lose any money. These handles I have today, I purchased at the local hardware store. You can get them. They're called shovel handles. So you don't have to take any crazy measurements or anything like that. But you could potentially make these shovel handles yourself. We have a couple black locust saplings out there. They're a couple years old. I want to try to make a shovel handle out of that and see how long that thing lasts. The first step to rehandling this is getting, the old handle off. Now, well, I guess 90% of the time whenever you're rehandling it, it's because the handle broke off. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut this handle down shorter because giving me this long extension gives me a little bit of an advantage, and it's not beneficial to you to see, me repairing a handle that isn't fully broken. I've had shovels break off down in the collar before. That's a little bit annoying. I'll show you a couple tricks on what we can do to get this thing out. Let me cut this handle off first, and we'll get right back to it. All right, now that the handle is off, we're gonna take this out of the vise and take a look at it. And you'll see that there's two rivets on the side. Some have only one rivet, some have two rivets, some have one rivet going this way and then another rivet going this way. It doesn't really matter. We still have to take them off. There's a couple different ways you can go about it. You can use a grinder, like a little, hold on, I'll grab it. Could use one of these little grinders like this, little battery powered one, angle grinder. Not using a wire wheel, that wouldn't work. You'd be there for a while. You could use a belt sander, but in this case, we're gonna use a little handheld bandsaw. Also, if you cut on that side of the crack, basically if you cut the crack off of the wood, you can use this to rehandle something else if you wanted to. I mean, it's really up to you. You could cut it up and use it for a couple different handles. I would redo the finish on it and probably sand it back quite a bit, but still a usable piece of wood. All right, now I'm gonna punch the rest of the rivet out with this cheap little screwdriver. I know everybody's gonna say, oh, you should be using a punch for that or whatever. Can't find the punch, and so it was either the cheap little screwdriver or an expensive screwdriver. So I went with the cheap one. All right, so I got the rivets out. The next thing to do is to get the rest of this wooden shank out. One of the typical ways you would do that is to kind of set your shovel handle there, not necessarily on your vise. You don't really want to pound on your vise, but you know, sometimes you don't have a choice and it's your only option. You would see that shank down in there? You can see that piece of wood there. You would rest it on something like this, and then you would take like a flat rod or something like that, stick it down on the end of this, and then beat the rod through. I saw somebody screw a 2x4 into the end of this, like a flat 2x4 into the end of this, and then they would hit the 2x4 off until it, you know, the shank finally popped out. I think we might go that route just so we can see how well it works. Actually, we'll give it a shot the traditional way first, and then if that isn't working, then we'll switch on over to that new method and see how well that works. I'm not really clamping it in there. I'm just kind of keeping it like snug so it stays still while I, you know, beat on it with a hammer. All right, so option number one didn't really work out that well, so now we're gonna screw this board to the shovel and see how well that works. All right, so I'm gonna be honest with you guys, and this is something a lot of YouTube channels wouldn't do. This one ain't coming out. I don't know what's going on. I wonder if it was epoxied on the inside or something like that. I mean, I used all of this stuff to try to get this shank out of this shovel, and it ain't working. It ain't coming out. I'm gonna have to apply some different techniques on this one outside of this video. But for video's sake, here's one I already took the shank out of. So I'm not lying to you guys. I'm swapping this one out for this one. This is gonna take a long time to get that shank out, or I might have to drill it out or something like that. Anyway, we're kind of under a time crunch. I'm gonna switch over to this one. Let's pretend that the shank came out smoothly like it does 75% of the time when you're doing a shovel. All right, I'm gonna get this thing out of the vise. I can't believe how many different things I threw at it and it's not even budging. I seriously wonder if it was epoxy, because I would clamp this, wiggle it, and it still wouldn't shift. It would twist up here before it would shimmy anything like that on the wood. I was a little curious. So I'm gonna put that one to the side, and we're gonna move on to this one. Now, whenever you buy a shovel handle, it's gonna come with this varnish on it. It's like a real slick, it's just a varnish. You want to scrape all of that stuff off, because that doesn't really help protect your wood any. In my experience, it doesn't really help protect your wood. And if it does, not nearly as well as everything else. Also, it creates blisters. If you use like a varnished handle for too long and you're out there like digging with it and you're not wearing gloves, it will eventually cause blisters. So what we're gonna do, these two pins right here, you wanna cut those off and set that off to the side right here. And I've got extras over here just in case we lose any. It comes with two. This shovel over here, the one that we now switched to, only has one rivet hole. So we only need one of those, so that's handy. So once I get all the tape off of this, we are going to scrape all this varnish off. I'll try to get a close up. Bam. So there you can see that real shiny stuff. We want to scrape all of that off. There's a sticker. It just says like 48-inch solid shank shovel, HDL, I don't know what that is, 7-inch tapered with slot, American ash, and it's made in Mexico. All right, hopefully that'll be from the farm before too long. So the first thing we're gonna do is scrape this varnish off. I'm gonna clamp it in the vise, and you can use a bunch of different things to scrape this varnish off. It could be, literally a knife. You could take like my little pocket knife right here and scrape like that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. It does dull your edge a little bit, unless you have some sort of super steel on your pocket knife. You can use a draw knife, which is gonna come in handy later, because we're gonna have to reshape this shank a little bit to fit better into the slot. or a card scraper or anything like that. I'm going to use, you can even use sandpaper. It does clog the sandpaper, so keep that in mind, but I'm gonna use a simple card scraper, which is just a flat piece of steel, flattened, and then it creates a burr on the other side. I almost said burl, but it creates a burr on the other side, which is super sharp, and you use that to scrape the shank off. So, just like that. It even scrapes the tape off. I don't know if you heard the difference in the sound whenever there we go. There's all the tape gone. Tighten that down a little bit. Also, if you have soft jaws for your vise, that's helpful because it won't leave any like clamp marks in your wood. All right, so that's all scraped off now. All the varnish is gone. Now what we need to do is, well, I'm gonna get this little staple out of here real quick, out of the end of the shovel where they had it hanging. There we go. Get this staple out. Now what we need to do is fit this shank into the shovel. And remember, we want it to sit as far in there as possible. We want it to make as much contact as possible as well. So I put it in there just kind of, hand tight, and it only goes that far in, which is that deep into the shovel. We want it to go at least up to here and make it curve a little bit, just a little bit. So what we're gonna do is we need to bring this shoulder down, and we need to fit it to about right here. I'll make a little mark with my knife. There we go. That's about where we need to thin it down to, or that's the height that we need to get, or the length that we need to get in order for it to fit, deep into that shovel. But to remove the stock wood, what I'm gonna do, there's a bunch of different ways to do this, but what I've found the most convenient way is to use a super sharp little pocket plane. It's a little, pocket-sized hand plane. You can use a draw knife, you can use sandpaper, all that stuff, but the pocket plane seems to have worked the best. And it's already, the key difference with the pocket plane is it helps if you shave in the direction that the grain is growing. If you do it against the direction, then it's gonna be, quite a bit difficult. But I'm just gonna remove a little material at a time, check it with that, remove a little bit more, check it with that. I don't wanna go too overboard where it's not making, any contact, but it needs to sit down in the shovel. So I'm gonna remove material and then check it. Got this thing seated in there. You can see it, well, I guess you can't really see it, but it's not far away. I haven't tapped it in yet. So like whenever we're done, well, I can just show you. Boom, that's how far it goes in there right now. And I haven't tapped it in yet. Once I tap it in, it'll go pretty far down in there. But the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to sand everything on the handle and also oil it. All right, the focus went blurry. All we did after that was sand it, sand the handle with 150 grit sandpaper and sand it out any hot spots. And now we're going to use this stuff, Mahoney's Finish. It's just walnut oil, that's really it. Only walnut oil, heat treated filtered walnut oil. And we're gonna use a paper towel and wipe all that stuff on. And then you wanna make sure you do this before you actually fit it to your shovel head. Otherwise the shank part won't get oiled. And that's kind of a crucial spot because if that gets wet or damp down in there, all it's gonna do is trap the water basically up against your wood. And you don't really want that. So I'm gonna apply a coat of this walnut oil. And this stuff, there's a specific way to oil with your walnut oil. I'll show you guys in a minute. But you're basically, with your walnut oil, you want to get a thin coat on there. Walnut oil is a polymerizing oil. To my understanding, the polymerizing oil bonds to the wood, like becomes part of it, and then hardens. And it's also a food safe polymerizing oil if you're using it on spoons or bowls or anything like that. But you want to apply a very thin coat and then sit it in the sun for 15 minutes. And that was based off of a lecture that I don't know, it was like some scientist that specifically deals with like polymerizing oils. I don't even know what kind of scientist that would be. But he was giving a lecture to a bunch of spoon carvers and wood carvers and explained how to properly oil with walnut oil. And it's a very thin coat, because a lot of people soak, their wood and their bowls and spoons and stuff like that in mineral oil or something. But walnut oil is completely different. You apply a very thin coat, wipe it off. Oh, I almost hit myself in the face there. Wipe it off and then put it in the sun for 15 minutes. Oh, another important detail is that if you look down the handle, you'll notice that there's areas that have ovals in the grain, and then there's areas that have straight lines in the grain. We want these straight lines in line with the shovel. We don't want the ovals like this in line with the shovel, because that's the weakest part. We want the grain working with us. So we want the straight lines with the head of the shovel, in line with the shovel. Give it a couple good whacks. Well, maybe you can't. Yeah, you can. There you go, right in there. You can kind of see that shank right there, the light brown part. All right, now we have to drill a hole in here with a 3/16 inch size drill bit. Just go in a little bit through that side, and then we'll flip it over and do a little bit on the other side, because I'm sure that wasn't straight. There we go. Now we want to take one of our pins and we want to dry fit it in there and make sure it fits. I'm going to heat this up and I'm going to fit it through the hole and then rivet it. It's called a hot rivet. I'm going to rivet it into place. Like that. All right, so now we're going to test the new handle by harvesting comfrey on literally the hardest soil we have on the property. It's over here. It's over where the previous owners overgrazed cows for quite a while. The comfrey isn't big, and the point of it is just it's not really big. It's out here to feed I'll show you. Boom, there it is right here. It's out here to feed the sheep whenever we graze them, or the pigs or anything like that when we graze them out in this part of the forest. All right, there we go. There's a comfrey plant right there. The shovel held up. It actually wasn't as compacted over here as I thought it was. Those comfrey leaves can be fed to the sheep. But if you look at here, actually they can be fed to the sheep, chickens, whatever livestock you have. And if you want any comfrey, go to the website. You can buy comfrey crowns, comfrey salve, also bone sauce there. Link down below. But if you look here, this is why you never have to buy comfrey again. This was planted not too long ago in pretty crappy conditions. But if I break that off, that's one root, 2, 3, that can be broken in half. That's 4. Break that one off. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That can be split in half, so 12. And then here's the crown right here. I can replant the crown, and I have 12 new comfrey plants just like that. It's pretty easy. That's why you never have to buy comfrey once you have a comfrey plant. You never have to buy it again. And then you can do this. You can replicate it like this multiple times a year. There's certain plants that I've harvested, well, about 3 times this year so far. So put that in perspective. I'll go plant those somewhere else. All right, y'all, I hope that video was helpful. It's not hard at all to rehandle a shovel. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, you know, reshaping it right. You might buy 2 your first try, just in case if you remove too much material or anything like that. Also, if your shank does get really stuck in there like ours did in the beginning, it's just going to take some time with a drill bit and just drilling holes through, removing material, busting it out and stuff like that. We were kind of on a time crunch on this video, so I wasn't going to go through that whole process. Instead, I was just going to show you what happens on most, like 75% of the shovels that you rehandle. All right, guys, thanks for watching. See you next time.